I think that there's no way that if George Floyd wasn't a cisgender black man, that it would have gotten as much news coverage. Well, think about it like this. Like, if so, the reason it went viral, for instance, right, is because a bunch of people individually decided it was grievable and worthy of mourning enough to share it with people, right? And yes, you're absolutely right that it was very vocal, and this person was, George was very clearly in urgent need of assistance and was begging for his life, which makes it more grievable to some if you need those sorts of circumstances to make a life more worthy of grieving. Um, and on top of that, he was he was this family man, and he was beloved in the community, and like he is very, I think, I don't know his sexuality, but it's something that we might assume that he's heterosexual, or he's ostensibly heterosexual, and he kind of played that like father figure, family man, husband kind of role in the city, and the homophobia on an individual level that people experience, or that people are a part of, or transphobia on an individual level that people are part of, would stop people from sharing the video of him being murdered. And yeah, there's no doubt in my mind. That's my perspective being an American.
Okay, Michele?
Those are like my exact thoughts, Abigail. But just to go a little bit further,
Yeah.
with Floyd being a black cis hetero man, he also had a family. So I felt like everybody was like sharing for that reason, and they raised like millions of dollars for his daughter to go to college and stuff like that. And I feel like had he been in another type of relationship, it wouldn't have gone that way. And just all the support that he got after that. Yes, he did get murdered in broad daylight, and we did have that live coverage, and that video did circulate around the world, and I do understand that. But I just can't get it like off of my like mind and just like my heart that we haven't done anything about like Breonna Taylor just yet, and she was like killed inside of her home. And with the justice system being the way that it is, I know that in order for her to actually get justice, they would have to go like all the way up to the judge to actually sign the warrant for them to have a no-knock warrant. So I do understand that, but at the same time, almost every pivotal point in the Black Lives Matter movement, or even like just any race movement, with few exceptions, started from cis black men. It's like even last time the world grieved was when Mike Brown got shot, and then a lot of things happened in between then. And then we had Philando Castile and a bunch of other people. And then I remember Sandra Bland got some coverage, but there were a lot more Black women and Black trans women that actually got murdered. And then the world mourns again for George Floyd, because he's like this hetero man that had his family, and it was so sad that his family lost him. But it's like, I know that for sure my other sisters and brothers are being ignored. I definitely don't think that he would have gotten as much time or support from the world had he been what he was.
I do definitely think, George Floyd being a family man, you when you think of media, it's about, what angle are they coming at it from, and that definitely was the way that everyone shared those images, and even like raising the funds for his daughter. I do think that also played a part. Some of it also, just to add a different point, or just to continue what someone else said, is the timing of it. I think definitely being in lockdown globally has made some difference, in the sense that people have a lot more time on their hands and not occupied. Whatever it is, in nowadays society, everyone works quite a lot and usually has very little time just to gather their own thoughts, let alone, rally up a movement like the general wider public. And I do think people were already trapped, sort of being in lockdown, a bit more frustrated and just a little bit more switched on, I suppose, because having all that time. I think that's another factor that added to that. There's probably many different things if you break it down, but in terms of the question, I do think if he was LGBT, would it been exactly the same? I do still think it would have been less in some way or another.
So overall, do you believe that the LGBTQ plus community does not get the same coverage?
Yeah, to quote Stonewall, I think they did a report recently, and they said, when the media do write about trans people that have been affected by violence, a lot of the time, even the headlines and the way that they share that information, whether they cover it, they are quite likely to be offensive and harmful, even when they are actually talking about different issues. The way that they go about it is usually quite disrespectful and not the right use of language or terminology. So even when they are, there is still issues with again, how we are being represented.
I think it would be less if he was part of the LGBTIQ plus. I cannot say anything about it because I never experienced it in a bad way. But hearing from friends, they have to come here to Holland because of they are gay or trans, and they don't feel supported. So I think in the Black society, it's a taboo. I think they don't want to support us because it's strange, it's taboo, it's evil, whatever. So it would be less supported if he was a part of the LGBTIQ plus. So, and that's bad because we are all people.
Mm-hmm.
We are all Black people of color, and we are all the same. We are all people. So I don't understand. You can fight, protest for this, but you cannot protest for something else. What is bad? What can affect people? So yeah, it's sad.
So I've heard a lot being said in the sense of there is no support in their own community, in the Black community. So is there more support from outsiders, or is there more support from your own Black counterparts?
So I would say I am a part of different clubs and stuff, and I'm just studying to be a psychologist in the schools here in the U.S. And what's interesting is that I talked to other teachers that are Black, and we were in our study group, and one of them was like, yeah, did you know that if a child identifies as trans, then we have to go with that and blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, they're kids. Like, that's fine. And it's just like interesting hearing that from them, and then hearing like my entire like white class that's with me being super accepting and super like just being advocates for these kids, versus like the people that I'm literally studying with, and like they're actual teachers right now in public school, and they're like, it's just one of the teachers told me that he asked boys to stop hula hooping in gym class, and I was like, it's a gym class, it's an activity. I'm not understanding why everything is just so, everybody's views, well, not everybody's, but the people that I've like encountered, like their views are more rigid, and it's just a complete flip when I am just in class talking to my cohort. And so, and I think that Lyra touched on this earlier, is that in the LGBTQ space, just identifying as that, but when you get in the Black space, you have to like erase that part of your identity. And so there's no intersectionality there. But I think that as far as the youth goes, I've seen a little more acceptance from just like my white counterparts, and then like just even in our own community. I think that's super sad.
Why do you think that that's the issue amongst us in our community?
I think that a lot of it has to do with people's values in general. So a lot of people that I hang out with are Christian, and I think that what they always forget is just like the loving piece of our faith. It's not to do anything else like that, but just like to love and accept people. They're super duper just like against everything, but then forget their own things that they're doing. I don't know. I think it comes from a place of privilege to be able to judge other people. Like we were saying earlier, when you're oppressed and you find ways to oppress other people, I think that makes you feel a little bit better.
Mr. Strange?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of more support outside of the Black community for LGBT people, without a doubt. I don't even think that's I think we all feel that. I do think being gay within the Black community is kind of labelled as a white thing, is not for Black people. I know definitely me, myself, like coming from the hood, it's not the same. Like if a white kid's gay, it's like, he's gay. If a Black guy's gay, when I came out gay, all my friends cut me off. They said, we don't want to fuck with you anymore. He said, that's it. You're out of here. You're gone. You can't mess with that. So, and the funny thing is, when we would go out and when we would be with like other people, parties and whatever, there would be white gay kids. And not to say that they wouldn't get any abuse at all, but they were there. No chance there would ever be a Black gay kid at a party where other Black people would be. It just where I come from, in my area, it wouldn't have happened. And if it did, there would have been a lot more abuse towards them. Now, the perspective that I come from is very different to maybe where you guys come from, just because of what I've experienced and what I've seen within my life. And like I said, I'm from the hood. A lot of my mates are in prison. Do you know what I'm saying? A lot of people I grew up with sold drugs and were involved in crime. And I'm in the rap industry as well. So not to take it off topic, but I feel this notion that white people, it is, I don't know whether to say it's the sole responsibility, but it is the responsibility of white people to change this sort of oppressive hierarchy that we're experiencing. I don't feel that that's necessarily the correct way to go about things. And I feel that just because right now we're in a position that we've never been, we have the most power that we've ever had as a community, as a Black community. And I feel that had our ancestors been in this year, they'll all be slapping us and telling us, look where you are now. They had to fight day in and day out with their bare hands to get what we experience today. So I feel that sometimes we take it for granted. There's always this, why aren't white people educating themselves enough? But are Black people educated about Black issues? Really educated, Why aren't white people reposting this and doing this, but are Black people doing that? When I go out into the street, I see hate from my own people against me. Yeah. I see my people killing each other. Yeah. I see my people selling drugs. I used to sell drugs. Do you get what I'm saying? That's the area, that's the environment that I was in. So I feel this whole thing about white people are the only people who can change Black issues. I feel that Black people, I think we need to acknowledge the power that we do have in the situation that we're in to change and to make a change, because we have a lot of it. I don't want to keep going on and on and on, but I just think we have to understand that we can't keep on asking and blaming white people for the problems that are currently going on in our community. Although that they are coming from the top down and at the top is white people, we do also have the ability to make changes and differences. When we get money, we buy chains, we buy cars, we buy clothes. When we go over to auntie's house, it's, look at her with her weave and look at her, she ain't got no money, our kids are all riffraff. And do you get what I'm saying? There's so much judgment within our community and it doesn't allow us to grow. If we focused on certain things that were more beneficial towards us, I feel that as a community we could evolve. That's just my views. I think if we look at the top, at the top is white people. They have the blueprint. If you want to learn how to cook Chinese food, you look at Chinese people. If you want to know how to cook Jamaican food, you look at Jamaican people. Unfortunately, the world we're set up in at the top is white people. If you want to take elements and learn how to do things properly, you need to look and see what they have done that's put them in a position. I'm not saying copy, I'm not saying do what they're doing, but I'm saying that we need to understand that not everything we're doing is right in how we're trying to move forward. That's just my views on the matter.
Let's see, Cece, what do you think of Mr. Strange's statement? Do you agree? Disagree?
So I don't really feel like I can speak on a Black community. I kind of feel like I'm more in a position to speak about the experiences I've made in the white community, just because that's the people I'm mostly around. So what I just wanted to say is that, to go back to your question, where I feel more accepted, as a Black woman, I definitely feel more represented about Black people. But then when I want to be myself as a queer woman, I've always had to kind of go into queer white spaces because that's the only thing we have here. And then when I'm there, I can't express myself as the Black woman I'm becoming, and I can't talk about all those issues and like my thoughts and feelings about that, because then I will have nobody to like really speak up for me or like understand and feel what I'm talking about. So for me personally, I just felt like I didn't belong anywhere. And there was no representation, so I always felt like I had to be something. Like people were putting me in a box. They heard I was half white, half Black. They were like, okay, you're this and that, so you have to do this and you have to act that way. So for me, it's just always been a big identity crisis of not knowing where I belong to and not feeling like I could just be everything that I am. Like I always felt like I had to hide one part.
You feel the same way, Cairo or Jackson? Because you both are also mixed race, correct?
I do agree with everything, or pretty much all of that you just said as well. And in terms of like being mixed race, I think I've lived in the UK in my teenage years. I lived in Spain for like 5 years. It's weird because I feel like I've lived in so many different parts of the country. So I've lived in London, I've lived in Kent, I've lived sort of traveled a lot. So I think some schools that I used to go to, it would be either predominantly white or predominantly Black. When I was in the predominantly white schools, I was probably one of 5 people that was not white, even from like literally like 5, 6, 7 in like the playground. I was aware that I was different, and people would make me feel and make, comments about the color of my skin. And I didn't feel like I fitted in that kind of school because people would make me feel different. And then before I went to Spain, I lived like more in London, and that's where, apart from when I lived in Spain, I'm mostly from, and mostly in like predominantly Black areas or much more diverse areas. So in one way, it was nice to feel like I could connect with more, my Black culture and that side to me. But then I also sometimes was in situations where even sometimes the Black community would almost imply that I'm not Black enough, the same way that in some white spaces I'm not white enough. But obviously I'm mixed race, so I'm never going to be one or the other. I'm literally a combination of both. And my mum has always been sort of forward thinking in the sense that she wants us to embrace, all of who we are, and to respect other people's cultures, religions, everything. So I never really had any issues, but I felt like when I go out into the world, people would suddenly place all these issues upon me. And sometimes because people don't always know where I'm from, because they can't always tell, you kind of hear all sorts of conversations that are just as uncomfortable, and then you have to call people out, or you just, I don't know, it's just a lot to deal with, really. So I've experienced different kind of prejudice. And then in terms of like, where do I feel like I've got more support? If you're looking at organizations, if you think about where people are getting money, where people are getting funded, most of those organizations, they're not Black, they're not predominantly like a Black business or a Black organization. The way that the funding is given out, the way that the hierarchy is, like, you can be just as qualified, but you'll probably have to, really have some good connections to get some funding and support. Obviously, at the moment, a lot of people are doing like crowdfunding and getting projects supported, which is amazing. But if you just go back and look at the way things are naturally set up, I do think without even just the cultural differences, that's also an issue sometimes, because you can't, I don't know, they're not getting that extra level of training. They're not getting to do these alternative projects where you're forcing people to mix with other people and learn something new and grow and push out of your comfort zone. So that's just my experiences.
So I think that there are Black, queer activist leaders that are in my community that it's really cool to have their support. But the majority of my friends that are queer or gender variant in some way are white. And the majority of my friends in general are white, which is definitely connected to homophobia and transphobia. And this also just has to do with me. I'm mixed, I'm Black and white, and I grew up in the suburbs. A lot of the people around me were white. And a lot of the things that I'm into are pretty white, historically, or right now, design or entrepreneurship or organic food or things like that. So I would say I definitely feel more accepted around my white queer comrades, but I love my Black queer comrades, and I love just all Black people, even if they're homophobic, because I think of it as kind of like an illness. It's definitely a symptom of colonization, and it doesn't represent African culture, and it represents Black American culture as a product of colonization, and not in its best parts and not in its true form, but in its worst parts. And I think it has to do a lot with Christianity too. It's interesting though, because my white mom has been reluctant to use my pronouns and has been taken longer to adjust, and has just approached my gender with skepticism. And she told me that she thinks my bisexuality is a phase, essentially, and that she had a phase. But my dad was super accepting, didn't even blink about my bisexuality. Yeah, I thought so. He was really quick to adopt my pronouns and my name. It's not a Black thing. It's a shitty colonization, perversion of the Bible, and lots of different things that kind of go into homophobia and transphobia. But it often makes me feel unwelcome in those spaces. And there is Rochester Black Pride and stuff, but I've never really delving into it, because I do feel accepted by just the overall Pride celebration, even though it is mostly white, I guess, because I do feel, because I am white and I'm also Black, and I feel comfortable around white people. But there's also a need for specifically Black spaces for queer Black spaces. So yeah.
Okay, Anna.
Yeah, I wanted to say that personally, I don't feel safe in white LGBTQ spaces at all. So, like, I mean, like, it depends what kind of character you have when it comes to how much you are engaged with the LGBTQ plus community. But personally, my sexuality is not that important that I need a space to be addressing the problems, the feelings, and thoughts I have about my sexuality than the spaces where I can talk about me being a Black woman in a racist society and just racist world in general. Because at the end of the day, I don't get treated like trash every day because I'm bisexual, but I get treated like trash every day in Germany because I'm Black. And that is a difference for me. I think it is bad that I don't really know a space in Leipzig where I can go to the Black community and they are queer as well. I can feel safe in there. But on the other hand, it's not that bad that it is affecting my mental health because sexuality is a very private thing. And personally, I'm a person who's like, it's none of anyone's business who I am attracted to and with who I have sexual activities. But it is very important that people understand that it's very important that people understand that I'm Black and that I'm glad to be Black. I feel like there's definitely the need for Black spaces in the LGBTQ plus community. But the problem is a little bit that most of our siblings struggle with being Black and being queer and being open about the queer part. Therefore, it's not so easy to create safe spaces in rather smaller towns like Leipzig. Maybe time will tell, but whenever I see a demonstration about LGBTQ lives or just BIPOC lives in general, there are a lot of white people. And this is why I never attend demonstrations or events where there is not a safe space for Black people because I am tired of hearing white fragility and white tears because it is violent and it is selfish and it is white supremacy. And I am tired of that. Therefore, I'm like, you know what? I'm staying at home. I'm educating myself. I'm looking what is going on. I'm trying to find strength in events that are happening in other parts of Germany and around the globe. But right now there is no event for me, therefore I'm not gonna attend anything.
Okay, thank you. So I have another question. In the LGBTQ plus community, is there a lot of internal criticism like racism, colorism, or preferred identities? How is it in the LGBTQ plus community? Plus, what you experience on the outside as well. So it's a double stress.
I think there is a lot of strain on like race within the communities. Like I know for one, as a Black guy, dating a white guy is like wow, what, you don't like Black people? It's like, no, like they are the white guy, you know. It's like, and I think that's the same with even in the straight community. But I think I've definitely felt it a lot in the sort of Black LGBT community. Like dating outside of race with being gay is like kind of frowned upon by other Black gay people. I feel in the same in the same respect, I feel that there is this whole thing of preferences, because I don't know the exact terminology, but like, you know, people will be very specific about who they want to date, especially on like dating apps and things like that. Each to their own, but at the same time, it can also start to go into racism, and it can also start to go into prejudice and etc. So I feel like there is this big weight on people's sort of like shoulders to conform to who people want you to date. And I don't feel that it's really fair, because everyone, that's the whole point of what we stand for, isn't it? Love is love, you know? So why, I just feel like there's so much within communities, there's even smaller issues within that community around the facts of racism, etc. You know? So I just feel that it's really regressive, it's really backward. It doesn't help anything or anyone to have such a, I mean, who has the monopoly on who you can date and who you can't date? You know, we all like what we like. And I don't feel there should be any pressure on that.
Jackson, you were shaking your head. Do you want to add on?
Well, no, I just recognize what he's saying, because most of the times my girlfriends are white. It sounds very familiar because, you're loving white chicks, right? Why, we have enough hair of your own. And I'm like, you are not going to decide for me what I love, what I want to eat, because I have a skin color. So if they like somebody who has the same skin color, who is also black, I will not say, oh, you have to take somebody with a beard or something, or with a mustache or something. Why are people always interfering in other people's business?
I want to know, what do you want from the Black Lives Movement? What does the LGBTQ plus community need, as in like support wise? Because for me personally, I feel like the Black Lives Matter movement is for straight Black men, and they neglect, Black women and the LGBTQ plus community. Because when I had the episode with the girls, they said what they felt was needed. What do you need for this movement? What kind of support? What do you need your other Black people to do in order for you to feel supported, to feel like you are part of this movement?
I feel like what I'd like to see happen is, the same way that we've got them hashtags saying, all Black Lives Matter, to include, you can't keep segregating and forgetting the LGBTQIA plus community, or forgetting women, because you're literally fighting for the same cause. So you can't keep, again, neglecting certain pockets of people. So it's really about thinking a little bit harder, or looking out of your immediate comfort zone or social group, and really connecting and supporting each other, because everyone's showing up and standing up and speaking for the same causes. So again, it's about doing the work within, and also reaching out a bit further than your immediate little comfort zone or your social group, because it's about unity. I think I'd like to see a lot more unity.
No, I definitely agree. It is literally about unity. That is the whole point of the movement, And I feel that it is true that we need to not forget about any pockets within the Black community, and we just need to think about all people. The whole all lives don't matter until Black lives matter. I'm more of a fan of all lives matter at exactly the same time. We all matter equally, individually, at the same time. There is not going to be a one time where Black people matter more than white people matter more than Black people, or gay people, or whoever it is. There might be times when one particular community needs more support, but it doesn't mean that they matter more than anyone else. And I feel that that's the same within the BLM movement. And I just feel like there's so many reasons as to why we've got to that point where Black people are so negative towards gay people. There is 100 reasons, and we could sit here all day and wonder about the reasons, but at the end of the day, we're here now, and I just think we need to work out how we're going to move forward. And I feel that definitely one big thing is just coming together and listening to each other. I think some people don't want to hear why someone doesn't like them. They just want to automatically change their views. Like, you don't like me, change my views. Me, like I said, coming from where I come from, coming from the hood, I had to understand why people didn't like me in order to move within the hood, because the 90% of people don't like me because I'm gay. So for me to be able to function day to day around them sort of people, I have to understand firstly why they don't like me. I shouldn't have to do this, but unfortunately you do. And as Black people and as gay people, as much as we don't like it, we're going to have to learn to understand why people don't like us. As much as we don't want to, we're going to have to see things from their point of view and able to, number one, educate them. You might find it hard to change people's views, but, hopefully they do change their mind. And if they don't, they don't. But you can't possibly start to think about how you're going to change someone's views if you don't understand why they have them views in the first place. I think you do need to, especially within the BLM movement and with gay people and how we're going to be accepted by other Black people, is first understand, they don't, we're not liked, and just work out how we're going to move forward. I do think there's a lot of work to be done. But when we come together, it's really, really hard to hate someone that is showing you love, like face to face, and that can only happen when we meet each other in the same spaces. And by the same space, I don't mean a room, I just mean in the same community. We need to be open. Black people need to be more open about their sexuality and not try to conform. As hard as it is, we just need to be strong and understand that it's not going to be easy, but we have to be ourselves to teach people who we are. And yeah.
So I guess we just really need more people that don't identify with us to actually advocate for us. So the only way that I think that this will actually change, and that I think actually change this entire movement in general, just like the Black Lives Matter going into just like white spaces and trying to create the anti-racist space. The way that worked was that we actually kind of got a lot of people that didn't look like us to advocate for us. So I'm going to apply the same thing to what we need, and that's just for people to actually like advocate for us to kind of get rid of that, or try to have those conversations, those harder conversations with their counterparts. It's not just us always fighting for us. So hopefully we can get some people that don't, that can actually be allies and advocates for us, because that's really how we're going to change this, not just because we've been fighting for a long time. We actually just need them to help us.
Abigail, what do you think of Michele and Mr. Strange's statement?
I would say we have to, I guess for me, maybe it's because I'm American, but to me, Black Lives Matter is like very specifically about state-sanctioned violence and police killings of Black people. But it also brings to consideration just the grievability of Black lives in general. Also, when we're taking each other's lives, I would want people to not just pick up anti-racism reading and work, but also to make sure that within their anti-racism they see the links between race, gender, sex, sexuality, and how the racism is so linked to gender, race, and sex and sexuality, and to try to do their best to dismantle that system and to eradicate homophobia and transphobia within the Black community. I don't want just to be tolerated, but I want to be openly accepted and welcomed. And I think that that should be the standard that we all expect for each other and from each other and for each other.
My safe space, I feel so safe when I'm with the Black LGBTQ community, but not when I'm with the Black community in general, because a lot of Black men feel attracted to Black women and they are trying to send you message and stuff like that. But when they are around the other people, the community, they try to be rude or make me feel some type of way. And I would like them to accept themselves and accept everyone in a way they want to.
I have one more question. What do you personally do to make the change for the Black Lives Matter movement? What do you personally do? Because you want your counterparts to accept you, but what do you do to do your part?
So I just want to say that, especially around white people, I've been feeling like since this movement started, everybody started like posting things on Instagram, reading up on Instagram, and like kind of also getting a better feeling just from having posted something, feeling like you've spoken out and you've done something. But people forget that you always, no matter how much you think you are woke, like there's always more you have to learn, and you're never on a point where you know everything. So I think everybody has to do their part in just reading books, diving deeper, knowing about our history. There's so many things we still don't know. I think the biggest change we personally can make is just take it into our everyday lives, like listen to more Black music, buy from Black businesses, and speak a word in like the spaces you're in. Like I understand that for work, especially, like you can't always be as vocal as you would like to be, but like with my family, as I mentioned, they're all white. Like every day I just try to like speak up when I hear like those microaggressions, like little things they say.
Well, the few things that I've really been trying to focus on is just like economic power. So I've been buying Black a lot more than I was before, and just trying to really like exclusively do that for the things that I need. And the other part is just, of course, like attending protests, trying to have organized if possible, and then just like sharing all the information that's needed that people need to read. And like I stated before, just like whenever I am in white spaces, like really bringing this topic up and kind of like making them challenging their viewpoints. And then because I realized that a lot of people that just didn't think that we needed the BLM. I think that they realized that just because it isn't happening to them, or just because that they don't do it, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. That that's where a lot of the like ignorance comes from, just about like race in the world, but like specifically race in the U.S. Is that a lot of the white people that I know thought that we didn't need it and that there wasn't any racism anymore, but that's because they don't really hang around Black people and they're not really like privy to the things that we go through. So I think just really having those conversations, challenging my white counterparts, just really trying to hone in on buying Black and stuff is what I've been doing. Things that I've really been trying to focus on. It's just like economic power. So I've been buying Black a lot more than I was before, and just trying to really like exclusively do that for the things that I need. And the other part is just, of course, like attending protests, trying to have organized if possible, and then just like sharing all the information that's needed that people need to read. And like I stated before, just like whenever I am in white spaces, like really bringing this topic up and kind of like making them like kind of challenging their viewpoints, and then seeing where, because I realized that a lot of people that just didn't think that we needed the BLM didn't think, I'm sorry, that we needed the BLM movement. I have a slight stutter for that, but I think that they realized that just because it isn't happening to them or just because that they don't do it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So I think that that's where a lot of the like ignorance comes from, just about like race in the world, but like specifically race in the US, is that a lot of the white people that I know thought that we didn't need it and that there wasn't any racism anymore, but that's because they don't really hang around Black people and they're not really like privy to the things that we go through. So I think just really having those conversations, challenging my white counterparts, and like just really trying to hone in on buying Black and stuff is what I've been doing.
Okay. And one more question, and then we're going to bring the final thoughts. The last question that I have is, what do you hope will come about from Black Lives Matter movement in your life and in your society as a whole? She said, who?
I was like, wow, that's deep. I think primarily I just don't want it to be another thing that just gets swept away like when things quieten down. Like, I think there's a lot of power, there's a lot of momentum, and it's just keeping that momentum going, not forgetting to stop the violence, stop discriminating people based on the color of skin. All this racism, it's just that we are more alike than different. So personally, I just would love people just to come together, or just to listen to each other a lot more. Yeah, the list is sort of infinite, really, but I think I just want more equality in this world, and I would love to have more unity, just on every level. Like, I know it's a bit open, but yeah.
I just hope more equality, not even necessarily from the Black Lives Matter movement in general, obviously just from the Black community and everything. You have to remember that Black Lives Matter is solely a movement. There may be more to come in the future, but at the center of that is Black lives. That is the whole point of it. So whatever movement, whatever shape it may take, I just hope that, you know, we learn to just accept people and stop to, you know, sort of plug out of social media. I think social media is a weird place to sort of, where people are kind of on a scale of how much they're doing to help Black Lives Matter or Black lives. I think we need to take what we see on social media, as there's a lot of information, there's a lot of misinformation as well, and we need to just take what we learn and just implement it in real life, because, you know, social media isn't real, you know. So I just feel that that's what we need to do. We just need to learn, keep on learning, and implement that in real life.
That's a good point. Abigail, what do you think?
I think that I would love to see this conversation widen to the grievability of like all Black lives, like from violence that isn't from police officers as well. And just that as like, for example, trans people and trans women being killed. So I would love it for it to affect society in that way, and I would love to be personally affected, to be able to express myself and wear what I want, like outside in my own community, and not fear for my life. That would be really cool. And I want to see the defunding of the police across the board, and refunding of programs for social good, and funding of alternative emergency services, such as for mental health, as well as for violent situations, have like a specialized people for that, as well as sort of mediators or what have you, those are the sorts of solutions that I think that we need from that standpoint. And I also stand for the decarceration and abolition of prisons. And I think that rehabilitation is possible, but most importantly, prevention of crime is possible. The war on crime only creates more crime, and it makes crime sort of this almost like a commodity, or like certain things are almost like cheat codes to get you to where you want to go, and you can cheat and commit a crime. The real issue is capitalism and scarcity, and the fact that, like, going by this big well-known example of George Floyd, that he was killed after a shopkeeper called for him allegedly using a fake $20 bill. Just that shows where the importance is in, like, the minds of the police officer, and maybe in the minds of society, of like something of monetary value is more important and more grievable than a Black life. And that's really terrible. And even if we go to transphobia, the mindset of the group mindset, and even associating with someone that's queer or trans, sort of deplatforms a person or decreases their social ranking, and that has a direct effect on their ability to, like, feed themselves, as well as just their ability to have their social needs met, which is a part of your Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have to look at it in terms of how are people being deprived of something, and how is this false ideology, whether it's transphobia or homophobia or Nazism or anti-Semitism or white supremacy, how are those things serving somehow? How do they think those things are serving their needs, but in reality they're actually hurting their needs? And how can we show them how they're actually hurting their best interests by subscribing to these sorts of ideologies, and then make that also true, like, in society, like make it so that it's not advantageous to be a white supremacist or a Nazi or homophobe or transphobe. But I think that I see widespread change that is possible as a spark from this. I want to see activism become part of everyone's everyday lives. And I have an app for activism that I've been designing for 9 years called the App for Activism. I'm crowdfunding for it right now on GoFundMe. And if you're interested in activism and think that we need better practices, the App for Activism is based on practices rather than just the sharing of media as like culture, but it's actually based on trying to have practices and create best practices from those practices. So
I think that we all need to practice on a regular basis, that it is important to get uncomfortable and to decolonize ourselves on a daily basis. But we also have to keep in mind that change is not going to happen overnight, and not everything can be achieved overnight. It will take a long, long time and a lot of energy and effort and strength. But I think if we network with each other, like every Black person is networking with each other, maybe also to the EPOC community, with the EPOC community, we can make change by ourselves. It is, personally for me, it is too exhausting to think about how the entire society can be changed, because I think this is not necessarily something that is that much important. Because at the end of the day, the history shows that even if you demand that their entire society should change, and you give them the best ideas and the best information and the best organizations, institutions, so on and so forth, as long as white supremacists have money and bribe everyone, it's going to be very difficult to change their entire society. The only thing that can be changed is the personal mind of each and every individual, but I think it's important to focus on our own people when it comes to decolonization. We can change them easily, and it's more healthy to help them decolonizing than to help white people because, you know, there's too much white fragility, and I think it is also too painful to teach a white person about decolonization when they are the root of colonization. Yeah.
So let's do final thoughts then. Let's start with Michele.
I guess my final thoughts is just that I was really glad to be a part of this panel. It was interesting hearing you all's perspectives from your countries. So that was interesting. And then just hearing about your backgrounds and things of that sort. I think that it still lets me know that there still is a need for just Black Lives Matter just globally, even though people try to say that it might seem a little easier, like away from the States. It's still, there's still issues that need to be tackled. So I think just being able to actually voice our concerns, and then just being able to show that we are still Black and we do like have intersectionality with also being a part of the LGBTQIA community. So it's just really important for us to feel seen within the movement, and it's happening globally too. So
obviously it's been really good hearing everyone's point of views, you know, loads of different occasions that we've got, loads of people from different places. I'll just say probably my final thoughts would be to just remember that I honestly feel, me personally, that change is possible. We can change it, as small as it is, you know. Every mind that changes is, you know, we might not see the change in our time, but we might spark the mind that changes someone else's mind, and then so on and so forth, you know. And remember that this stuff comes from the top down, and the people at the bottom aren't just Black people, it's also the people that might one day go to the top. So if we can teach the people at the bottom how to do it right way, that when they get to the top, they might not implement the same oppression that we are facing today. So I do think change is possible. Talk to people, listen to people, especially listen. I think more so listen than talk. So yeah, that's it. And yeah, definitely thank you. It's been great talking to you guys.
Final thoughts. Well, I'm just happy that I could participate with this, because it sounds maybe strange, but I'm a little bit new. I am a little bit more aware about Black Lives Matter and everything around it, and I'm just happy that I could participate, because I want to learn more, also more about myself, because I have a little bit sort of a identity crisis. The more I can participate with these kinds of conversations, the more I can learn about myself, about other people.
First of all, I also want to say thank you to everybody, and I really enjoy hearing about everything. Yeah, I think the most important thing really is to start talking and breaking taboos and listening to each other. So yeah, I think that's the most important thing, to just like go out and speak about these topics and don't feel hesitant to express who you are and yourself. And I think that actually is the biggest act of a revolution, is to just proudly be yourself and to start representing something different in your circle and whoever you're around.
Cairo.
Hey, so I just wanted to say thank you for hosting. Thank you for bringing us all together. It's always nice to listen, as much as it is to be asked to speak and everything. It's also, I think it's more valuable hearing other people's stories and experiences, and not just, again, like it's branching out of, it's literally across borders, you know, it's international, and a more unique perspective. So first of all, thank you for that. And then other final thoughts would just be, I guess what's going on in my head is like, you know, you need to remember your roots, you need to remember the history and things of the past, but also life is always evolving and always changing. So it's about thinking, you know, what can we do right now, and what do we want our future to look like, rather than always highlighting all the things that maybe we don't want it to look like. Sometimes it puts your focus on those things, where sometimes I prefer to see, well, where's the opportunities, where can we put more resources and energy into building better, and yeah, just keep growing. And like kind of what Mr.Strange said, you know, it's about from the top all the way, it feels back down to the bottom, but at the same time, like you said, there might be people that might be going to the top, but you're changing the way that they're thinking, you're planting those seeds, because as you see through the generations, some of these things are filtering out. So there is hope as well. As much as it is a serious topic, sometimes it's a bit heavy, sometimes it's hurtful, sometimes it's painful, but at the same time, at this moment, there's a lot of light coming into it. There is a lot of hope. And I think that's something that I personally also want to hold on to and connect in again with everybody. So thank you very much.
I'm super grateful that you reached out to me, Ivy. It was a nice surprise. This is a cool. I wasn't sure what it would be like. At first, I thought you were talking about like a open space, like a app or something. But I'm glad it wasn't an app, so that I don't have to like compete with you or try to collaborate or anything, because that's tiring. No, I'm just joking. This has been really fun. I watch a lot of panels and like feminist lectures and panels on YouTube and on different university websites. So I like the panel format. And I think that just the collective impact of all of us having the new knowledge that we've gained today and applying that every day moving forward, the fact that every person that we talk to can gain from our knowledge that we're getting today, and then every person that they talk to, and so on and so forth, we really shouldn't underplay that. And we should take all of the practices that we've talked about that today and really incorporate them and make commitments to doing our part, as much as we can do our part as the oppressed. And I don't think that the majority of the onus for these issues should go on the oppressed people. But I also think that we have a part to play, or speaking for myself, I feel like my part to play is to educate people. And it is to like use my career, like making an app for activism, or using my platform on Instagram to work on these sorts of issues and stuff like that. But it's about however you feel like you can contribute, and if you want to, and if you have the space to contribute. But just be super intentional about it, I suppose.
Okay.
And just thank you all so much.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to formally thank every single one of you for taking part today, because I've learned so much, and I hope that you learned from each other as well. Thank you, and